apologize for the yeah, yeah. This is gonna come up because I know you're gonna notice it. Yes, I got a scratch on my nose, and yeah, I got a bleeding disorder, so it looks like really, really bad. It's fine. It's pretty fine. I'm all right. It's okay. Saw my buddy the other day reading one of my favorite books from one of my favorite authors of Lewis Carroll. He was reading Alice Through the Looking Glass. I thought he was reading Alice's Adventures Underground, or as people call it, you know, Alice in Wonderland. That's not the main thing. But anyway, I figured I would read one of my favorite books because I had lent this to a family member and she just found it in her car. And I was like, well, shoot, I read this book just like because. I got this from, I don't know, a bookstore. Believe it or not, in the 90s, we would hang around used bookstores, buy CDs. If you don't know what a CD is, that's okay. Now, I do not speak French, so we are not reading the French version of this. I cannot read you Le Français because I cannot speak that good of French. My French is bad. Part one. Anyway, see the absurdism and the nihilism shown in this book. The nihilism is at first, well, you'll see with the main character. And if you guys have ever heard the Cure song, you know, I am the stranger killing an Arab. Hi, guess what inspired that friggin' song? I'm gonna try to not drop F bombs. We're gonna keep this PG 13 ish. But I'm gonna do this for about an hour or half hour until I have to pick my kid up from her tutor. I private tutor around the corner here. So we're gonna start with chapter one. My mom died today, or yesterday maybe. I don't know. I got a telegram from the home. Mother deceased. Funeral tomorrow. Faithfully yours. That doesn't mean anything. Maybe it was yesterday. The old people's home is at Marengo, about 80 kilometers from Algiers, and I'll take the 2 o'clock bus and get there in the afternoon. That way I can be there for the vigil and come back tomorrow night. I asked my boss for 2 days off, and there was no way he was going to refuse me with an excuse like that, but he wasn't too happy about it. I even said, it's not my fault. He didn't say anything. Then I thought, I shouldn't have said that. After all, I didn't have to apologize for anything. He's the one who should have offered his condolences, but he probably will after tomorrow when he sees I'm in mourning. For now, it's almost as if Maman weren't dead. After the funeral, though, the case will be closed, and everything will have been a more official feel to it. Hello, Emmy. Yeah, hey, I'm doing well. We're having a literature. This is this is this is a literature stream. Yep, this is what I'm doing. L'étranger by Albert Camus. Albert Camus wrote The Stranger. I am the stranger killing an Arab. You know, the fucking, you know, okay, I can't. God, how long has it been until I had to drop an F bomb? I was trying to keep this PG 13, but fuck it. I caught the 2 o'clock bus. It was very hot. This is about, you just caught me at the start of chapter one, and we are reading, like I said, The Stranger by Albert Camus. You can see the beating this book has taken and how many times I have read it. If nihilism and absurdism had a Bible, or at least an explanation that people could like reach. And yes, even my cup is Yankees themed. Sorry, guys. You're going to see Yankees more than you're going to see Pikachu. I got the 2 o'clock bus. It was very hot. I ate at the restaurant at Cedas as usual. And everybody felt very sorry for me. And I said, you only have one mother. And when I left, they walked me out the door. I was a little distracted because I still had to go up to Emmanuel's place to borrow a black tie and an armband. He lost his uncle a few months back. I ran so as not to miss the bus. It was probably because of all the rushing around, and on top of the bumpy ride, smell of gasoline, the glare of sky on the road. Then I dozed off. I slept almost the whole way. And when I woke up, I was slumped against a soldier who smiled at me and asked if I had been traveling long. I said, yes, just so I wouldn't have to say anything else. The home is 2 kilometers from the village. I walked to them. I wanted to see my mom right away, be the caretaker, but the caretaker told me that I had to see the director first. He was busy, so I waited a while. The caretaker talked the whole time, and then I saw the director. I was shown into his office. He was a little old man with a ribbon of the Legion of Honor in his lapel. He looked at me with his clear eyes. Then he shook my hand and held it so long I didn't know how to get it loose. He thumbed through a file and said, Madame Marceau came to us 3 years ago. You were her sole support. I thought he was criticizing me for something, and I started to explain, but he cut me off. You don't have to justify yourself, my dear boy. I've read your mother's file. You weren't able to provide for her properly. She needed someone to look after her. You earn only a modest salary, and the truth of the matter is she was happier here. I said, yes, sir. He added, you see, she had friends here, people her own age. She was able to share things from the old days with them. You're young, and it must have been hard for her with you. That's true. When she was at home with me, my mom used to spend her time following me with her eyes, not saying a thing. For the first few days she was at the home, she cried a lot. But that was because she wasn't used to it. A few months later, she would have cried if she'd been taken out. She was used to it. That's partly why I didn't go there much this past year, and also because it took up my Sunday, not to mention the trouble of getting to the bus, buying tickets, and spending 2 hours traveling. The director spoke to me again, but I wasn't, hey, Wink, but I wasn't really listening anymore. This is a literature stream. We are reading The Stranger by Albert Camus. We're in chapter 1, page 5, if you have this version of it. If you went to college or high school in the 90s, you probably do have this version of it. Don't know. Nobody's literate anymore. And yes, I've already addressed this. I got a scratch on my nose. I have a bleeding disorder. It looks way worse than it is. Leave me alone. So yes, and it's a huge nose. I know. So it really, really stands out. I get it. Yeah, I know. You were just born in the 90s, you little bastard. Gen X bitch. The director spoke to me again, but I wasn't really listening anymore. Then he said, I suppose you'd like to see your mother. I got up without saying anything. He led me to the door. On the way downstairs, he explained, we've moved her out to our little mortuary. She is not to upset the others. Whenever one of the residents dies, the others are a bit on edge for the next 2 or 3 days, and it makes it difficult to care for them. We crossed the courtyard where there were lots of old people chatting in little groups, and as we went by, the talking would stop. And conversation would start up again behind us. The sound was like muffled jabber of parakeets. The director stopped at the door of a small building. I'll leave you now, Monsieur Messa. If you need anything, I'll be in my office. I know enough French to pronounce it, not enough to translate it, so we're doing this in English, god damn it. 3, maybe. Oh, I'll be in my office. Oh, got a stuck page. I was like, 3 is not an underscore. Okay, there we go. As is usually the case, the funeral is set for 10 o'clock in the morning. This is the way I'll be able to keep vigil over the departed. One last thing, it seems your mother often expressed to her friends her desire for a religious burial. I've taken the liberty of making the necessary arrangements, but I wanted to let you know. I thanked him. While not an atheist, Maman had never in her life given a thought to religion. I went in. It was very bright, a whitewashed room with a skylight for a roof. The furniture consisted of some chairs, cross-shaped small horses. 2 of them in the middle of the room were supporting a closed casket. And you could see there were some shiny screws, not screwed all the way down, standing out against the walnut-stained planks. Near the casket was an Arab nurse in a white smock with a brightly colored scarf on her head. Just then the caretaker came in behind me. He must have been running. He stuttered a little. We put the cover on. I'm supposed to unscrew the casket so you can see her. He was moving toward the casket when I stopped him. I said, no. You don't want to? I answered, no. He was quiet, and I was embarrassed because I felt I shouldn't have said that. He looked at me and then asked, why not? But without criticizing, like, as if he just wanted to know. I said, I don't know. He started twirling his mustache, and then, without looking at me again, he said, I understand. He had a nice pale blue eyes and a reddish complexion. He offered me a chair and then sat down right behind me. The nurse stood up and went toward the door. At that point, the caretaker said to me, "She's got an abscess." I didn't understand, so I looked over the nurse and saw that she had a bandage wrapped around her head just below the eyes, and where her nose should have been, the bandage was flat. All you could see of her face was the whiteness of the bandage. When she'd gone, the caretaker said, "I'll leave you alone." I don't know what kind of gesture I made, but he stayed where he was, behind me. Having this presence breathing down my neck was starting to annoy me. The room was filled with beautiful late afternoon sunlight, and two hornets were buzzing against the glass roof. I could feel myself getting sleepy. Without running around, I said to the caretaker, "Have you been here long?" Right away, he said, "5 years," as if he had been waiting all along for me to ask. After that, he did a lot of talking. He would have been very surprised if anyone had not told or had told him he would end up the caretaker at the Marengo home. Then I remembered that before taking me to the director's office, he had talked to me about my mom. He told me that they had to bury her quickly because it gets hot in the plains, especially in this part of the country. That was when he told me that he had lived in Paris and that he had found it hard to forget it. In Paris, the vigil over the body for, now we're going to the letter of the word 3, sometimes 4 days. But here you barely have time to get used to the idea before you have to start running after the hearse. Then his wife said to him, "Hush now. That's not the sort of thing to be telling the gentleman." The old man had blushed. He apologized. I stepped in and said, "No, not at all." I thought what he'd been saying was interesting and made sense. Important line in this story. It was interesting and made sense. So the only way to live in an absurdist reality and a nihilistic reality is, optimistic nihilism is a real thing. You can Google it if you need to, or Bing it, or whatever the hell search engine or AI you're using. I really don't care. This is not part of the book. This is me. This last bit where I'm not looking at the book. Back to the book. In the little mortuary, he told me that he'd come to the home because he was destitute. He was in good health, so he offered to take a job as a caretaker. I pointed out that even though he was still a resident. He said no, he wasn't. I'd already been struck by the way he had often been saying they or the others, and less often the old people, talking about the patients when some of them weren't any older than he was. But of course, it wasn't the same. He was the caretaker, and to a certain extent, he had authority over them. He did clean up their shitty shit after they were done accidentally shitting. Just then, the nurse came in. Night had fallen suddenly. Darkness had gathered quickly, and above the skylight, the caretaker turned the switch, and I was blinded by the sudden flash of light. He suggested I go to the dining hall for dinner, but I wasn't hungry. And he offered to bring me a cup of coffee with milk. I like milk in my coffee, so I said yes, and he came back a few minutes later with a tray, drank the coffee, and I felt like having a smoke. But I hesitated, because I didn't know if you could do it with Maman right there. I thought about it. It didn't matter. I offered the caretaker a cigarette and we smoked. At one point, he said, "Your mother's friends will be coming to keep vigil too. It's customary. I'll have to get some chairs, some black coffee." I asked him if he could turn off one of the lights. Some of us don't like the lights so much. The glare on the white walls was making me drowsy. He said he couldn't. That's how they'd been wired. It was all or nothing. It didn't pay too much attention to him after that. He left, came back, set up some chairs. And one of them, he sat down across from me on the other side of Maman. The nurse was on the side of the room too, but with her back to me. I couldn't see what she was doing, but the way her arms were moving made me think she was knitting. It was pleasant. The coffee had warmed me up, and the smell of the flowers on the night air was coming through the door. I thought I'd dozed off for a while. It was a rustling sound that woke me up. Because I had had my eyes closed, the whiteness of the room seemed even brighter than before. There wasn't a shadow anywhere in front of me, and every object, every angle, every curve stood out so sharply it made my eyes hurt. That's when Maman's friends come in. That's when about 10 in all, and they floated in the building like blinding light without a sound. They sat down without a single chair creaking. I saw them move clearly than I had ever seen before, and none of the detail on the faces of their clothes escaped me. But I couldn't hear them, and it was hard for me to believe they really existed. Almost all of the women were wearing aprons, and the strings, which were tied tight around their waist, made the bulging stomachs stick out even more. I had never noticed what huge stomachs old women can have. Almost all the men were skinny and carried canes. What struck me most about their faces was that I couldn't see their eyes, just a faint glimmer of the nest of wrinkles. When they had sat down, most of them looked at me and nodded awkwardly, their lips sucked in by their toothless mouths, so that I couldn't tell if they were greeting me or if it was just a nervous tick. I thought they were greeting me. It was then that I realized that they were all sitting across from me, nodding their heads, grouped around the caretaker. For a second, I had the ridiculous feeling that they were there to judge me. Soon one of the women started crying. She was in the second row, hidden behind one of their companions, and I couldn't see her very well. She started crying softly, steadily, in little sobs. I thought she'd never stop. The others seemed not to hear her. They sat there hunched up, gloomy, silent. They would look at the casket and would look at it. The women kept on crying. It surprised me because I didn't know who she was. I wished I didn't have to listen to her anymore, but I didn't dare say anything. The caretaker leaned over and said something to her, but she shook her head, mumbled something, and went on crying as much as before. Then the caretaker came around to my side. He sat down next to me. After a long pause, he explained without looking at me. She was very close to your mother. She says your mother was her only friend, and now she hasn't got anyone. We just sat there like that quite a while. The woman's sighs and sobs were quieting down. She sniffled a lot. Then finally she shut up. I didn't feel drowsy anymore, but I was tired and my back was hurting me. Now it was all these people not making a sound that was getting on my nerves. Except that every now and then I'd hear a strange noise that I couldn't figure out what it was. Finally I realized that some of the old people were sucking at the insides of their cheeks and making this weird smacking noises. They were so lost in their thoughts that they weren't even aware of it. I even had the impression that the dead woman lying in front of them didn't mean anything to them. But I think now that that was a false impression. We all had some coffee, served by the caretaker. After that, I don't know anymore. The night passed. I remember opening my eyes and at one point seeing that all the old people were slumped over asleep, except for one old man with his chin resting on the back of his hands wrapped around his cane, who was staring at me as if he were just waiting for me to wake up. Then I dozed off again. I woke up because my back was hurting more and more. Don, no, I did not write this book. Okay, I know it. I know it. Just listen. Dawn was creeping up over the skylight. Soon afterwards, one of the old men woke up and coughed a lot. He kept hacking into a large checkered handkerchief, and every cough was like a convulsion. He woke the others up, and the caretaker told them that they ought to get going. They got up, and the uncomfortable vigil that had left their faces ashen looking. On their way out, and much to my surprise, they all shook my hand, as if the night during which we hadn't exchanged as much as a single word had somehow brought us closer together. I was tired. The caretaker took me into his room, and I was able to clean up a little bit. I had some more coffee and milk, which was very good. When I went outside, the sun was up. Above the hills, the separate Marengo, at that separate Marengo, the sun was up. Above the hills, the separate Marengo from the sea, and sky was streaking with red. And the wind came over the hills and brought the smell of salt with it, and it was going to be a beautiful day. It had been a long time since I had been out in the country. I couldn't feel how much I'd been enjoying. I'd enjoy going for a walk if it hadn't been for Mama. But I waited in the courtyard under a plane tree. I breathed in the smell of fresh earth, and it wasn't sleepy anymore. I thought of the other guys at the office. They'd be getting up to go to work about this time, and for me, that was always the most difficult time of day. I thought about those little things a little more, and I was distracted by the sound of a bell ringing inside the buildings. There was some common behind the building, behind the windows, then Everything, or commotion, sorry, behind the windows, then everything quieted down again. The sun was now a little lighter in the sky. It was starting to warm my feet. The caretaker came across the courtyard and told me that the director was asking for me. I went to his office. He had me sign a number of documents. I noticed that they was dressed in black with pinstripe trousers. He picked up the telephone and turned to me. The undertaker's men arrived a few minutes ago. I'm going to ask them to seal the casket. Before I do, would you like to see your mother one last time? I said no. He gave me the order to the telephone, lowering his voice. Fijac, tell the man I can go ahead. After he told me he would be attending the funeral, I thanked him. He sat down behind the desk and crossed his short legs. He informed me that he and I would be the only ones there apart from the nurse on duty. The residents usually weren't allowed to attend funerals. He only let them keep the vigil. It's more humane that way, he remarked. But in this case, he'd given one of the mother's old friends, Thomas Perez, permission to join the funeral procession. And at that, director smiled. He said, I'm sure you understand. It's a rather childish sentiment, but he and your mother were almost inseparable. The others used to tease them and say, Perez is a fiancé. He laughed and enjoyed it. And the truth is, he's taking Madame Merson's death very hard. I don't think I could rightfully refuse him permission. But on the advice of our visiting physician, I did not allow him to keep the vigil last night. We didn't say anything for quite a long time. The director stood up and looked at the window of his office. A moment later, he said, Here's the priest from the Marengo already. He's early. He warned me that it would take at least 3/4 of an hour to walk to the church, which is in the village itself. We went downstairs. In front of the building stood the priest and 2 altar boys. One of them was holding a censer, and the priest was leaning towards him. Adjusting the length of its silver chain, as we approached, the priest straightened up. He called me my son and said a few words to me. He went inside, and I followed. I noticed right away that the screws in the casket had been tightened and that there were 4 men wearing black in the room. The director was telling me that the hearse was waiting out in the road, and at the same time I could hear the priest beginning his prayers. From there on, everything happened very quickly. The men moved toward the casket with a paw. The priest, his acolytes, the director, and I all went outside. A woman I didn't know was standing by the door. Monsieur Master, the director said. I didn't catch the woman's name. I just understood that she was a nurse assigned by the home. Without smiling, she lowered her long, gaunt face. Then we stepped aside to make way for the body. We followed the pallbearers and left the home. Outside the gate stood the hearse. Varnished, glossy, and oblong, it reminded me of a pencil box. Next to it was a funeral director, a little man in a ridiculous get-up, and an awkward, embarrassing-looking old man. I realized that it was Monsieur Perret. He was wearing a soft felt hat with a round crown and a wide brim. He took it off as the casket was coming through the gate. A suit with trousers that were corkscrewed down from around his ankles, and a black tie with a knot was so too small for the big white collar of his shirt. His lips were trembling below a nose dotted with blackheads. Strange, floppy, thick-rimmed ears stuck out through his fine white hair. And I was struck by the blood-red color next to the pallor of the face. The funeral director assigned us to our places. First came the priest, then came the hearse, flanking it, the 4 men. Behind it, the director and myself, and bringing up the rear, the nurse and Monsieur Palais. The sky was already filled with light. The sun was beginning to bear down on the earth, and it was getting hotter by the minute. I don't know why we waited so long before getting underway. I was hot in my dark clothes. The little old man who had put his hat back on took it off again. I turned a little in his direction and was looking at him when the director started talking to me about him. He told me that my mother and Monsieur Poet often used to walk down to the village together in the evenings, accompanied by a nurse. I was looking at the countryside around me, seeing the rows of cypress trees leading up to the hills next to the sky, and the houses standing out here and there against the red and green earth. I was able to understand Maman better. Evenings in that part of the country must have been a kind of sad relief. But today, with the sun bearing down, making the whole landscape shimmer with heat, it was inhumane and oppressive. We got underway. It was then that I noticed how I had taken a slight limp. Little by little, the hearse was picking up the speed, and the little old man was losing ground. One of the men flanking the hearse also dropped back and was now even with me. I was surprised at how fast the sun was climbing in the sky. I noticed that for some time the countryside had been buzzing. Remember, it's like 10 o'clock in the morning. I noticed that for quite some time the countryside had been buzzing with the sound of insects and the crackling of grass. The sweat was pouring down my face. I wasn't wearing a hat, so I was fanning myself with a handkerchief. The man from the undertaker's said something to me which I missed. He was lifting the edge of his cap with his right hand and wiping his head with a handkerchief and left me at the same time. I said, "What?" He pointed at the sky and repeated, "Pretty hot." I said, "Yes." A minute later, he asked, "Is your mother in there?" I asked, "Yes." "Was she old?" I answered, "Fairly," because I didn't know the exact number. After that, he was quiet. I turned around and saw Palais about 50 meters behind us. He was going as fast as he could, swinging his felt hat at the end of his arm. I looked at the director, too. He was walking with great dignity, without a single wasted motion. A few beads of sweat were forming on his forehead, but he didn't wipe them. Very professional, don't you think? For such a routine fucking event as a funeral. People are born, people die. That's kind of this. That's kind of the whole point of this book. It's like, it's the absurdism of it all. Who cares? Just enjoy it while you got a shot. All the procession seemed to me to be moving a little faster. All around me, there was still this glowing countryside flooded with sunlight. The glare from the sky was unbearable. At one point, we went over to a section of the road that had just been repaved. The tar had burst open in the sun. Our feet sank into it, leaving its shiny pulp exposed. Sticking up above the top of the hearse, the coachman's hard leather hat looked as if it had been molded out of the same black mud. I felt a little lost between the blue and white of the sky and the monotony of the colors around me. The sticky black of the tar, the dull black of all the clothes, and the shiny black of the hearse. All of it. The sun, the smell of the leather, the horse dung, the smell of the varnish from incense, my fatigue after a night without sleep. It was making me hard to think or see straight. I turned around again. Plague seemed to be way back there, fading into the shimmering heat. Then I lost sight of him altogether. I looked around and saw that he'd left the road and cut across the fields. I also know that there was no bend in the road up ahead. I realized that Pale, who had known the country, was taking a shortcut in order to catch up with us. By the time we rounded the bend, he was back with us, and we lost him again. He set off cross country once more, and so it went on. I could feel the blood pounding in my temples. After that, everything seemed to happen so fast, so deliberately, so naturally, that I don't remember any of it anymore. I mean, except for one thing. As we entered the village, the nurse spoke to me. She had a remarkable voice which didn't go with her face at all. A melodious, quavering voice. She said, "If you go slowly, you risk getting sunstroke. But if you go too fast, you work up a sweat and then catch a chill inside the church." She was right. There was no way out. Take that line for what it means. There was no way out. Several other images from that day have stuck in my mind. For instance, Palai's face when he caught up with us for the last time just outside the village. Big tears of frustration and exhaustion were streaming down his cheeks, but because of all the wrinkles, they weren't dripping off. They spread out, ran together again, leaving a watery film over his ruined face. Then there was a church and the villages and the sidewalks, the red geraniums of the graves and the cemetery. Palais fainting, he crumpled like a rag doll. The blood-red earth spilling over Mammoth's casket and the white flesh of the roots mixed in with it. More people, voices, the village, waiting in the front of the cafe, the incessant drone of the motor, and my joy when the bus entered the nest of lights that was Algiers, and I knew I was going to go to bed and sleep for 12 hours. So there's the first chapter of Albert Camus' The Stranger. I know I have I have sticky things that are for, okay, don't know where they are. I can make a bookmark, it's pretty easy. considering that's the end of chapter 1. I'm going to come back and we're going to do chapter 2. We're going through this whole damn book. I don't care. You can watch. You don't have to watch. I don't care. If you want to hear some weirdo read The Stranger, which won a Nobel Prize in Literature, what, 1956 was it? 57. Had to look at the back of the book. I'm cheated. Sorry. Yeah, it wasn't 56. It was 57. Stupid me. This was written in 56. So anyway, that Albert Camus, if you haven't heard of the philosophical concept of absurdism, he's kind of, I don't know, the most modern voice of it, and the clearest modern voice of it. So hope you enjoyed. If you didn't enjoy, don't watch any more of these. Just don't. I mean, how did you get this far? I mean, seriously. But if you want to hear some weirdo baritone friggin' read the rest of The Stranger, I'll be here. This is my channel. Thank you for taking your time and staring into the void. And I will remind you, once again, come on, say it with me. As Nietzsche once famously penned, beware those that stare into the void. The void also stares back into you.